Leonardo DiCaprio has been one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces for over 3 decades. We've watched him grow from a fresh-faced teenager on television to one of the most acclaimed actors of his generation. We've seen him charm us in romantic dramas, terrify us in psychological thrillers, and inspire us with his environmental activism. But beneath the carefully crafted public image, behind the Academy Awards and the glamorous premieres, there has always been something the world didn't fully understand about Leo. For years, the media has focused on his dating life, his yacht parties, his celebrity friendships, and his reluctance to settle down. Critics have dismissed him as just another Hollywood playboy, living the endless bachelor lifestyle that his fame and fortune afford him. Tabloids have tracked his every move, counted his relationships, and created a narrative about who Leonardo DiCaprio really is. But they got it wrong. We all got it wrong. At 50 years old, Leonardo DiCaprio has finally opened up about the real motivation behind his life choices, his true passion that has driven him for decades, and the devastating reality he has been trying to prevent while the world judged him for superficial reasons. What he confesses is not about romance or ego or fame. It is about survival. It is about a mission so urgent and so personal that it has shaped every major decision he has made since his 20s. This revelation will shatter everything you thought you knew about one of cinema's biggest stars. The truth behind Leonardo DiCaprio's controversial lifestyle, his relationship patterns, and his seemingly contradictory existence is finally being revealed. At 50, Leo is ready to explain himself, and once you hear what he has to say, you will never see him the same way again. Leonardo Wilhelm DiCaprio was born on November 11, 1974, in Los Angeles, California. His very name tells a story. His mother, Ermeline, was pregnant with him while viewing a Leonardo da Vinci painting in a museum in Italy. When baby Leo kicked for the first time, as she stood before that masterpiece, she knew what his name would be. From the beginning, he was destined for something artistic, something extraordinary. But Leo's childhood was far from the glamour of Hollywood. His parents, Ermeline and George DiCaprio, divorced when he was just 1 year old. He grew up in some of Los Angeles' toughest neighborhoods, including Echo Park, an area plagued by crime, drugs, and violence in the 70s and 80s. His mother worked multiple jobs to support them, and young Leo witnessed poverty and struggle firsthand. He saw drug dealers on street corners, heard gunshots at night, and understood from an early age that life was fragile and unfair. His father, George, was an underground comic book artist and distributor, a counterculture figure who exposed Leo to progressive politics, environmental awareness, and artistic expression from a young age. George would take Leo to museums, art galleries, and nature reserves, instilling in him an appreciation for both creativity and the natural world. These experiences planted seeds that would grow into defining passions later in life. But in those early years, Leo was just a kid trying to navigate a complicated world. School was difficult. Leo struggled to focus in traditional classroom settings, his mind always wandering to performance and storytelling. He was hyperactive, easily distracted, and dreamed of being an actor from the time he could remember. His stepbrother Adam was already finding small acting gigs, and Leo desperately wanted the same opportunity. At 10 years old, he started auditioning for commercials and television roles. Rejection after rejection followed. Agents told him his name was too ethnic, too foreign-sounding. They suggested he change it to Lenny Williams. He refused. His mother drove him to countless auditions, believing in him when no one else did. Ermeline worked as a legal secretary, often taking time off to support Leo's dreams. The bond between them became unbreakable, forged through shared struggle and mutual determination. Finally, small roles started coming. A commercial here, a brief television appearance there. In 1990, at 16, Leo landed a recurring role on the sitcom Growing Pains. It was his breakthrough into consistent work, but Leo wanted more than television comedy. He wanted to be taken seriously as an actor. He auditioned for film roles obsessively, studying the craft, watching classic performances, and pushing himself to improve. His dedication was remarkable for someone so young. In 1992, he was cast in this boy's life opposite Robert De Niro. Working alongside one of cinema's greatest actors at just 17 years old changed everything. De Niro saw something special in the young performer and mentored him, teaching him about preparation, intensity, and commitment to character. The following year brought What's Eating Gilbert Grape, where Leo played a mentally disabled teenager opposite Johnny Depp. His performance was so authentic, so heartbreaking, that many assumed he actually had a disability. At 19, he received his first Academy Award nomination. Hollywood had discovered Leonardo DiCaprio, and the world was about to follow. The mid-90s transformed Leo from promising young actor into a global phenomenon. In 1996, Baz Luhrmann's modern adaptation of Romeo and Juliet showcased Leo as the ultimate romantic lead. His chemistry with Claire Danes, his passionate intensity, and his classical good looks made teenage girls around the world fall in love. He was 21 and becoming a heartthrob, but he resisted being pigeonholed as just a pretty face. Then came 1997. James Cameron's Titanic was not expected to be the cultural earthquake it became. The production was troubled, the budget ballooned to over $100 million, and industry insiders predicted disaster. But when the film opened in December 1997, nothing could have prepared anyone for what followed. Titanic became the highest-grossing film of all time, earning over $2 billion worldwide. Leonardo DiCaprio became the most famous actor on the planet overnight. The phenomenon was unprecedented. Leo's face was everywhere. Magazines, billboards, lunchboxes, bedroom walls of millions of teenagers. He couldn't walk down a street without being mobbed. The intensity of the fame was suffocating. At 23, he had achieved a level of celebrity that few humans ever experience, and he hated it. The attention felt shallow, disconnected from the craft he actually cared about. He saw what fame had done to other actors, how it consumed them, destroyed them. In response, Leo made a crucial decision. He would use his fame strategically. Instead of accepting romantic lead after romantic lead, he chose challenging projects with visionary directors. He worked with Martin Scorsese on Gangs of New York in 2002, beginning a partnership that would define his career. He took on complex, often dark characters in films like Catch Me If You Can, The Aviator, and Blood Diamond. Each performance showcased his range and silenced critics who dismissed him as just a teen idol. But something else was happening during these years. Leo was becoming increasingly disturbed by what he was learning about climate change and environmental destruction. His father's early lessons about nature had evolved into a deep concern for the planet's future. In 1998, at just 24 years old, he established the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation, dedicating it to environmental causes. He began meeting with scientists, reading research papers, and using his platform to raise awareness. The tabloids, however, were more interested in his personal life. His relationships with supermodels became fodder for gossip columns. His attendance at parties and clubs was documented obsessively. The media created a narrative of Leo as a perpetual playboy, someone who refused to grow up or settle down. They tracked his dating patterns, noting that his girlfriends were often models under 25. The criticism grew louder with each passing year. Why wouldn't he commit? Why the same pattern over and over? What was wrong with Leonardo DiCaprio? Behind closed doors, Leo was living a double life. Publicly, he appeared to be the carefree celebrity the tabloids portrayed. Privately, he was becoming increasingly consumed by environmental activism. He funded conservation projects, produced environmental documentaries, and lobbied politicians on climate policy. In 2007, he released The 11th Hour, a documentary about environmental destruction that he wrote, produced, and narrated. Most people didn't watch it. They were too busy reading about his latest model girlfriend. The disconnect between public perception and private reality was growing wider. And as the years passed, as Leo entered his 30s, and then his 40s, still unmarried and still dating younger women, the judgment intensified. People assumed they knew who he was. They assumed his priorities were shallow. They had no idea what was really driving him, what kept him awake at night, what he was desperately trying to accomplish before it was too late. The greatest struggle of Leonardo DiCaprio's life has not been about acting or fame or relationships. It has been watching the planet die while feeling powerless to stop it. In the early 2000s, as he dove deeper into environmental science, Leo became aware of just how dire the situation was. He met with climate scientists who showed him projections of what Earth would look like in 50 years if humanity didn't change course. Rising sea levels, mass extinctions, climate refugees, ecosystem collapse. The data was terrifying. What haunted him most was the urgency. Scientists kept emphasizing that there was a ticking clock, a point of no return after which certain catastrophic changes would become irreversible. Leo realized that this wasn't a problem for future generations to solve. This was happening now during his lifetime. And despite his fame and wealth, despite his platform and influence, he felt almost completely ineffective in creating meaningful change. He threw money at the problem. The Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation has granted over $100 million to environmental projects worldwide. He funded anti-poaching efforts in Africa, rainforest conservation in the Amazon, ocean preservation initiatives, and renewable energy projects. He produced and narrated documentaries including The 11th Hour and Before the Flood, trying to educate the public about climate science. He spoke at the United Nations, met with world leaders, and used every award show speech to plead for environmental action. But nothing seemed to be enough. Carbon emissions kept rising, forests kept burning, species kept going extinct, and the public, including many of his own fans, seemed more interested in who he was dating than what he was saying about the survival of civilization. The frustration was crushing. Here was someone with every advantage, every resource, every platform, and he still couldn't make people care enough to change. The personal toll was significant. Leo struggled with anxiety and depression related to climate doom, a phenomenon psychologists now recognize as eco-anxiety. He would read scientific reports late into the night, watching models predict the collapse of ecosystems he had personally visited and fallen in love with. He felt guilty about his own carbon footprint, the private jets and yachts that his lifestyle required, even as he tried to offset them through carbon credits and renewable energy investments. The hypocrisy was not lost on him, and critics were quick to point it out. His relationship patterns became a source of intense scrutiny and mockery. The internet created memes about his preference for dating women under 25, jokes about him breaking up with girlfriends when they aged out of his preferred range. The criticism was brutal and often misogynistic toward the women involved. But few people stopped to ask why someone brilliant and introspective would repeatedly choose relationships that everyone knew were temporary. Leo has addressed this in recent years with surprising honesty. He has explained that his lifestyle choices have been deliberate, a conscious decision not to create the traditional family structure that would demand his time, attention, and emotional energy. He knew that if he had a wife and children, his responsibilities would shift. He would need to be present, to prioritize family dinners and school plays and all the beautiful mundane details of domestic life, and he didn't feel he could afford that distraction. This is the heartbreaking truth few people understood. Leonardo DiCaprio has spent the past 30 years in a state of emergency. He has lived as if the world is ending, because according to climate scientists, it is. He made a choice to sacrifice the traditional markers of adult life, the marriage and children and stability that most people aspire to, because he believed his purpose was more urgent. He felt that if he didn't dedicate everything to environmental activism, he would be complicit in planetary destruction. The Academy Awards added another layer of struggle. Despite brilliant performances in film after film, Leo was repeatedly denied the Oscar. He was nominated for The Aviator, Blood Diamond, and The Wolf of Wall Street, always losing to other deserving actors. The narrative became almost cruel. Would Leo ever win? The snubs felt personal, as if the industry didn't fully respect him despite his obvious talent. When he finally won Best Actor for The Revenant in 2016 at age 41, he used his acceptance speech not to celebrate, but to talk about climate change. Even in his moment of greatest professional triumph, the mission came first. At 50, Leonardo DiCaprio is finally ready to speak candidly about the choices that have defined his life. In recent interviews and public statements, he has opened up about the conscious decision to prioritize environmental activism over personal fulfillment. He has confessed that his unconventional lifestyle, the thing that has made him the subject of jokes and criticism, was a sacrifice he felt morally obligated to make. Leo explains that when you truly understand the science of climate change, when you comprehend the scale of what humanity is facing, normal life becomes impossible. How do you settle into comfortable domesticity when you know that millions of species are going extinct? How do you focus on decorating a nursery when coral reefs are dying and the Amazon is burning? He couldn't reconcile those two realities, so he chose what felt like the more important path. He admits this choice has cost him. He has experienced loneliness, the ache of watching friends settle down while he remained in perpetual motion. He has wondered what fatherhood would feel like, what it would mean to build a legacy beyond films and environmental grants. But he keeps returning to the same conclusion. If everyone with resources and platforms had worked as urgently on climate action as he has, maybe the world would be in a different place. Maybe his sacrifice would have been unnecessary. Now at 50, Leo is at a crossroads. The urgency hasn't decreased, but he is aging, feeling the weight of 3 decades spent in crisis mode. He continues his foundation work, continues producing environmental content, continues meeting with scientists and policymakers, but he is also beginning to question whether his approach was right, whether sacrificing personal happiness actually achieved enough to justify what he gave up. His relationship with Vittoria Chiretti, an Italian model, seems different from previous ones. At 50, he appears to be reconsidering what the next chapter of his life might look like. He speaks with more nuance now about balance, about the reality that even dedicated activists need joy and connection to sustain their work. He still believes the climate crisis is humanity's defining challenge, but he is learning that martyrdom may not be the most effective strategy. The confession that changes how we see him is the simple truth. Leonardo DiCaprio's entire adult life has been shaped by a burden most people cannot imagine carrying. He has lived every day knowing that the planet is in crisis, feeling personally responsible to do something about it, and struggling with the crushing awareness that even his best efforts may not be enough. His lifestyle wasn't about ego or immaturity. It was about someone trying desperately to save the world at the expense of his own traditional happiness. Leonardo DiCaprio's story is not the one we thought we knew. He is not the shallow playboy the tabloids portrayed. He is a man who made an extraordinary choice, who sacrificed the life he might have wanted because he felt a higher calling. Whether you agree with his methods or his priorities, you cannot deny the sincerity of his commitment or the depth of his concern for the future of life on Earth. His journey reminds us that public perception is often wrong, that the narratives we create about celebrities are rarely complete or accurate. It teaches us that every choice has a cost, that dedication to a cause can require sacrifices most of us never consider, and it challenges us to ask ourselves what we would be willing to give up for something we truly believed in. What is your take on Leonardo DiCaprio's confession? Did this change how you see his life choices? Do you think his sacrifice was worth it, or should he have found a better balance? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story gave you a new perspective on one of Hollywood's most famous faces, please subscribe to our channel for more revealing documentaries that go beyond the headlines. Hit that notification bell because we have incredible stories coming about other celebrities whose truth will surprise you. Leonardo DiCaprio at 50 has finally told us who he really is. Not the character we created, but the complicated, dedicated, flawed human being trying to make a difference in a world running out of time. And that truth is far more compelling than any